I have been a coin collector for really about 50 years now, and I have been somebody who has been buying and selling coins and precious metals for somewhere around 30 years, maybe 40 years, depending on where you wanted to kind of decide when it started becoming more than just a little bit of an occasional thing for me. And one thing that I have experienced many times in those several decades of doing this is folks who have inherited a coin collection and they have no idea where to start when it comes to evaluating the pieces, deciding what to do with them moving forward. And this is particularly difficult as it often comes in a time of upheaval, right? You've probably lost a loved one, you may be looking at financial hardships, and it is incredibly difficult to make life decisions under those circumstances. So this video series is designed for you if you have recently inherited a coin collection and are just not sure where to start. If you are new to the channel, my name is Dub C. I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you are interested in coins and precious metals, I'd like to encourage you to go ahead and click on the subscription button down below, click the notification button, become part of this community. If you are one of my returning subscribers, you should know I'm going to take this pretty slowly because I really want to have this information accessible for people who are outside of our hobby. This may be the first time that they've ever encountered these items. So I want them to understand what it is that we're talking about, but you are an invaluable resource when it comes to this situation. So I'm going to ask you to contribute to this video as well. If you are one of my returning subscribers, thank you guys for being here. And if you are familiar with the topics that we're going to be talking about in this series, I would love for you to add tips and additional comments down below. And I would encourage those folks who are in this position who have an inherited coin collection and are not quite sure what to do with it, read through those comments down below. Hopefully you can learn from this community, and this can be an ongoing directory of information. If you have inherited a coin collection and you're just not sure where to go with it, you will hopefully find this video series to be invaluable. Also, I want to encourage my usual subscribers, and my usual viewers to take to heart what it is that we're talking about. And I would like for you to put yourself in the shoes of your potential heirs when your collection may pass from your hands into the next generation. And this may be an eye-opener for you. We know so much about our hobbies, and it's hard for us sometimes to project that the folks who are going to be inheriting these pieces from us, if that is eventually what happens, they are not going to have any reference points. So I would encourage you to kind of put yourself in the shoes of somebody else who has never seen these pieces before, and maybe you can start to come up with a plan that's going to help your heirs so that they aren't in a position where they are flying blind if they have an inherited collection from you. I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. That disclaimer is I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. Now, I usually jump right into the meat of what we're going to be talking about in this video. And this video series is actually going to be probably 3 videos long. We will talk about kind of an introduction to an inherited collection. We'll talk about some of the things that are probably foremost on your mind if you find yourself in this situation. And then part 2 of this video series, I'll give you some of the good news and the bad news about most inherited collections. And then finally, part 3 of this video series will be specifically about gold coins, because I think that they warrant a much deeper dive, and there is greater potential to make a mistake with all the pitfalls that are involved with gold. So 3 videos in this series. My disclaimer, I usually jump right into what we're talking about, but I want to be absolutely, positively crystal clear when it comes to estate issues. I can't possibly give you the kind of advice that you really need when it comes to economic decisions, when it comes to tax preparation, and all of the other things that you really need experts in. So I'm going to ask that you, instead of watching this video, if you really think that this is something that you are going to have to face, contact an appropriate attorney, contact a financial advisor, contact an accountant who can help you with tax implications. There is simply no way that I can offer you valid information. I don't know what your financial situation is. I don't know the extent of this collection that you've inherited. Seek advice from people who are genuinely qualified and can understand your situation, because I can't give you that information. All I can do is share my experience when it comes to coins. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Obviously, you are in a situation where you are kind of unsure, and we're going to help you navigate some of those waters. And I'm going to tell you some of the things that I have seen, some of the things that are most commonly observed when somebody brings an inherited coin collection into a local dealer. This is something that I have been asked to appraise for many decades, probably 20 or 30 coin collections in that period of time, some of them quite small, some of them quite large, some of them with very little value, some with immense value. And I've also been in coin shops when collections have come in and have been asked by certain dealers to give opinions on certain pieces that are a little bit more esoteric. So this is something that I do have a little bit of experience in. But again, I can't possibly know what your situation is, so seek professional guidance if you have tax questions, legal questions, those types of issues. I want to start with some definitions. That's how I begin most of my videos. So we're going to have a couple of definitions that I'm going to bounce off of you. I'm going to try to make this a little bit brief, but I think that these will kind of help you as you are evaluating the coins that you see, hopefully in front of you. If not, if they are in an estate, if they are in safe deposit box, we're going to help you with some definitions. Before we really get into definitions, I want to give you one caveat more, and that is I have to be speaking here in very general, very broad terms. There are exceptions to every rule that we find in the numismatic or coin collecting community. So while I may give you some general values, some basic information, there is that one coin in a million that these generalizations won't apply to. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of coin collecting. I can't possibly give you advice on every single piece in your collection. That's not my intention. It's really to kind of give you a stable groundwork so you know exactly how to start and how to proceed. Definitions. The first one I want to talk about is what I call the 90% rule. And the 90% rule is that 90% of the pieces that you are likely to encounter in an inherited collection will probably have very little value. This is especially true if the person from whom you have inherited this collection was a casual collector. If this was somebody that pulled interesting coins out of change, even for the last 50 or 70 years, there aren't that many pieces of modern American coinage that are going to have a ton of value. And that's another slight caveat, is that this video series is really going to focus on American coins. Human beings started making coins about 2,500 years ago, and in that period of time, around the globe, trillions of coins have been made. Since I can't focus on everything, I'm going to try to focus on American issues, and you can probably glean some general information about those. And I will touch on a few foreign issues, but primarily we're going to be talking about American coinage. 90% of the pieces you are likely to encounter have very little value. What do I mean by that? It's kind of an arbitrary figure, but I'm going to go with a figure of $100. So 90% of the pieces that you find in a collection will probably have a value of considerably less than $100. In fact, that number is probably pretty conservative. It's probably closer to 95% of the pieces that you will find in a casual collection. So these are pieces that folks may have collected over time. They may have pulled these pieces out of circulation. They may have ordered a few pieces here and there from the mint, or they may have bought some from their local dealers. The difference between a casual collector and a very serious numismatist is that a serious numismatist probably has a more valuable collection, probably has a much more classified, qualified collection. We'll talk a little bit about that as we get further into this as well. That's not a judgment on somebody's coin collection. I want to be very clear. I have been a casual collector for many years. I have been a very serious collector for many years. One thing leads to another, often in numismatics, and hopefully you will find that to be the case here also. 90% rule. 90% of the pieces that you find in a collection are likely to have very little value. The second definition I wanted to talk about is I want you to have realistic expectations. So if you follow the 90% rule, there is a possibility that 10% of the pieces in your collection that you've inherited will have significant value. Again, I can't tell you for certain. I can give you some general guidelines and things to maybe put aside that warrant a little bit of extra explanation, a little bit of a deeper dive. But have realistic expectations. There are very few coin collections in America or in the world that will have life-changing value. If a great uncle, a mother, or a father have passed down a collection, pieces that they've pulled out of circulation, even pieces that they may have ordered a few exceptional coins for, it's probably not going to be life-changing money. Probably. So have realistic expectations. Understand that this is probably not going to be life-changing money. I hope that it is for you if you need it, but it likely will not have that kind of value. Why do the 10% of coins that fall outside of that 90% rule actually have value? The best way to describe that is an acronym that I call SCAD, as in SCADs of coins. S.C.A.D. We're going to talk about each one of those letters in just a moment. We'll talk about how they apply to the value of coins. But before we get into S.C.A.D., I want to give you the cardinal rule when it comes to coins. And this is particularly important if you have never seen a coin collection before, if you've never handled coins before. The number one rule, the one thing that I want you to take away from this video series, if you take nothing else away, is that we don't clean coins. Full stop. That's the end of the story. If that's the only thing you're taking from this series, I will be a happy numismatist. I have been present when coins have come into coin shops, and I have been asked to evaluate pieces that could have been worth $50,000 or $100,000, and the person just a few moments before coming into a coin shop had buffed and shined a coin up, and that completely destroyed the value of the coin. And what's true for these high value coins is just as true for the lower value coins. So please, if you have an inherited coin collection, don't clean anything. And I'm going to tell you a little bit why that matters. Coins are graded on a scale of 1 to 70. We call that the Sheldon scale. 70 is kind of a theoretical high for the coin's quality. Coins that are just leaving the mint after having been made are somewhere around 70. It's kind of unusual to have an exact 70, but maybe 67, 68, 69, something in there. And as coins enter circulation, the very fine detail on those coins begins to wear away. And after a coin has circulated for a long period of time, the details can wear away to the point that the coin drops from 70 or somewhere around there to the 50s, to the 40s, to the 30s, and eventually will drop down into the single numbers and sometimes even drop below those. We'll take a look at one of those examples here in just a second. So, the point is that it doesn't matter what TikToks you've heard, what articles you've read, what videos you've seen, there is no safe way to return the detail to a coin after it has been worn off. You can make a coin shiny, but coin dealers and coin collectors don't necessarily want shiny coins. And that is what you get when you clean a coin. But when you clean a coin, you are diminishing the value because coin dealers and coin collectors don't want clean coins. Original is always best. Even if something looks dark and tarnished, that is so much better than a coin that has been artificially cleaned to make it bright and shiny. The cardinal rule, don't clean coins. I've got an example of a common silver dollar here. This is called a Morgan dollar, named after the gentleman who designed it. These were made from 1878 up until 1921. But what I want you to focus on here is the hair above Liberty's ear. Do you see the really fine detail here? You can almost make out the individual strands here and down below her ear here. And on the back of the coin, that's an eagle, and we see these very fine feathers all on the eagle's neck and even on the eagle's breast. and especially here on these wing tips. Now, this is just an example of one coin, but this is kind of how coin grading works and what coin dealers and collectors are after. This coin was pulled out of circulation very soon after it was minted, probably grades maybe a 63 on that Sheldon scale. So this is a really nice coin. This is another Morgan dollar that saw a lot of circulation, and you notice that Liberty's ear right here, you can't see very many of the details of her hair at all. It's all been worn away. What you can see is that this coin is slightly darker. So while you could shine this coin up, you can't restore the fine detail of Liberty's hair. And that's what you would look for on this particular coin series to judge its grade. If we're looking at the back, remember the eagle feathers? Up here on the tips, there are very few that are still defined. There are very few eagle feathers on the neck and the breast. A few down here below. On the Sheldon grading scale, this piece is probably somewhere around a 10. So you can see how drastically that number drops once coins enter circulation. You could shine it up, you can make it bright, but that would never restore the details. And the details are what coin collectors and coin dealers are after. This is a coin that saw a lot of circulation. In fact, this coin is so well worn that it would probably drop below 1 on that Sheldon grading scale. You can't even make out the dates. You don't know exactly when this piece was made, but you can just barely make out Liberty's ear here, and there is no detail left in her hair. The eagle on the back, there are no feathers visible. There's no feathers visible on the neck, the wingtips, even down here below where we saw some in the last example. There is no detail left. It doesn't matter how much you shined up, polished, and waxed or dipped or whatever it is that you could possibly do to this coin to try to make it shiny. You're not going to bring back the detail, and the detail is what we as collectors and dealers are after. So we don't clean coins. I mentioned before the idea of SCAD. This acronym means scarcity, condition, age, and demand. These are what make those 10% of coins that fall outside of the 90% rule have some value. But before we get into the idea of SCAD, and I'll talk about each one of those letters, I want to ask those collectors, those subscribers who are familiar with coins, who do have a coin collection, who may find themselves one day in a situation where they have passed on and their collection has gone to their heirs, whoever that may be. Stop this video for a second, or write down the name of 3 or 4 trusted dealers that you have. Write down a few of the most important coins in your collection. That could be the pieces that have the most sentimental value. That could be the pieces that have the most financial value. Leave a few basic instructions. Put them in the ammo can, put them in the coin box, put them in the safe deposit box along with your coins, or put them along with your estate documents, your will, and so forth. Having your heirs at least have a starting point where they can delve into your collection and not be flying blind is going to be such a relief to them. It will take you all of 5 minutes, but go ahead and do that now while you're thinking about it. And then go ahead and click on the start button again. We'll start talking about that acronym S.C.A.D. Here we go. SCAD. Scarcity, that's the first letter. Scarcity matters. What does scarcity mean? Scarcity can be the small mintage, that's the number of pieces that were made in the first place, but it can also be pieces that are a high degree of preservation. We saw an example there with a Morgan dollar. And when I'm talking about mintages, and we'll reference this book often in this video series, this is called the Guidebook of United States Coins. There's a new one that comes out every year. It's spiral bound. It's not very expensive, about $25, $20 at your local shop. We, coin collectors and dealers, call it the Red Book. That's just the nickname that we have for it. But when we're talking about the Red Book, one of the nice things about the Red Book is that it has mintages. And mintages is simply the number of pieces that were made in a particular year with a particular mint mark. Mint mark indicates, in the case of this S here, in which city a coin was made. And if you need to stop and take notes, perfectly fine. In fact, have a book with you, scribble down some notes as we're talking about these. But in the red book, you can see it's organized by the types of coins, and then you can see the mintage of each of the coins that were made. And there is a correlation. The smaller the mintage, generally speaking, the higher the value versus pieces that have a large mintage. You see $8 versus 35 cents for the coin in the same condition here. That's a 4 on that Sheldon grading scale. So the dollar values, the prices that you're going to see in the red book, are probably not going to be especially accurate. Once we had the internet, online auctions tend to have a much more rapidly updated pricing structure versus the red book. Those are guidelines, but the nice thing about the red book is that mintages are always going to be very accurate, and the red book also helps you define the condition of the coins based on the remaining details, and that's how you price a coin. So a red book is a really valuable guide. Scarcity matters. If it's a small mintage, that's the small number of pieces that were made originally, and if that coin has the rest of the acronym letters, and we'll talk about those in a moment, then you've got scarcity. Another way to have scarcity is the fewer number of surviving pieces. And really briefly, I said I wasn't going to talk very much about foreign coins, but this is a great example. This is a Polish coin. This was made in 1932. It's called a 10 zlotych. But this coin is a 63 on that 70 grading scale. This coin is a 2-year series made in 1932 and 1933. Poland struck about 12 million of these originally. But because of what happened immediately after 1932, we had the run-up to World War II, we had the devastation of World War II, we had economic uncertainty and depression following immediately afterwards, that so few of these pieces remain in uncirculated condition. That's on the Sheldon grading scale, anything but that is 60 to 70. So few pieces remain at this point that about 0.07% of these coins still qualify as being uncirculated. That is an enormously drastic reduction from 12 million to about 900 pieces that would grade 60 and above for these coins. So that's a conditional rarity, a conditional scarcity. So 2 ways to kind of see rarity. It can be the original mintage, or it can be the surviving number of pieces. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get deeper into this. So that's the first letter in that acronym, scarcity. The second letter is condition. Condition matters a lot. We saw examples here with the Morgan dollars in a really high state of condition, a moderate state, and a really, really worn state of condition. Coin collectors and dealers aren't concerned with shiny. They are concerned with that detail that remains on the coins. So as much detail that can possibly be left. And I think we've had a pretty good explanation here of condition, high state of condition, medium, and a very low state of condition. Remember, don't clean the coins. It doesn't improve the condition. You can't bring back that detail. And I'm going to harp on that quite a few times, I'm sure, in this video. So that's the C in S.C.A.D. The third letter rather, is age. Age matters a little, and probably not as much as you might think if you are new to coins. What we have here is an example of a small bronze coin from the Parthian kingdom. This coin would be called a dram, and it was just kind of the common small circulating copper or bronze coin from this period of time. And you can see here, this is a gentleman with a helmet on his head, and there's a small ancient anchor here next to him. The interesting thing about this coin is that it actually dates from the 2nd century AD. So this coin is somewhere between 1800 and 2000 years old. That is an old coin. What's its value? Maybe $25. There were just so many of them made in so many different small states and kingdoms and fiefdoms going back over 2,000 years around the world, that there just aren't enough collectors who are interested in every single series from every single generation. Consequently, while age does matter at least a little bit, it is really not that significant a factor in that S.C.A.D. acronym. We'll talk a little bit about how some of the age does matter coming up, but really briefly, if you have American coins, 20th century American coins, the values are probably going to be pretty minor. Again, very generally speaking. 21st century pieces, generally speaking, will have very little value. 20th century pieces, 1900 up to 1999, probably not that much value. 18th century pieces definitely have some value. So if we're looking at value in terms of a grade, the 21st century pieces, probably not much value. The 20th century pieces, probably not that much value. The 19th century pieces, you're starting to see some value, and the 18th century pieces, a lot more, potentially, generally speaking. So things made in the 2000s, probably not a lot of value. 1900s, probably not a lot of value. 1800s, you're starting to get some significant value. And 1700s, especially when you're talking about the higher end coins, those can really have some value. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So age matters a little bit, but it really kind of depends on the rest of the letters in that SCAD acronym. The last letter in the acronym is D, and that means demand or desirability. And if you don't have demand, it doesn't matter what the other initials have for each one of the coins that you've inherited. If there is no demand, there will be no economic value, at least to those pieces. We'll talk about demand a little bit later here also. There are some corollaries to that SCAD acronym. How much you originally paid for the coin, and we're talking about an inherited coin collection. This could be pieces that your father, your grandfather, your great uncle, great aunt bought in the 50s or 60s or 70s. Those prices don't necessarily correspond to a valuable coin. Coins have ebbed and flowed in terms of their value. The grading standards have become a lot more precise. Whether or not a coin has been cleaned, there's that cleaning reference again. All of those things determine what the value of a coin is today. So if the coin does not have the scarcity condition, age, and demand, it doesn't really matter what somebody paid for it 20 or 30 years ago. There is a corollary to that also, though. It can be an indication, especially if you're talking about a nicer coin. The lower the price on a nicer coin, it could at least kind of give you an idea that something has increased in value. And this is specifically true, definitely true about gold coins, because gold has gone up in value so much since the 1960s, 1970s, even the 1980s, that gold coins that were purchased back then will probably have a significant increase in value. And that's why we're going to have an entirely different video specifically about gold coins and those pieces that you may encounter. So that's a corollary to SCAD. The prices don't necessarily correspond, but they may. So if you've got pieces that have a high price sticker on them, maybe set those aside. Those might need to be delved into a little bit more. And then the final corollary to SCAD is volume. I have seen collections that have come into shops that have had 10,000 pieces in them. But if those 10,000 pieces aren't especially valuable, then the volume of the collection doesn't really matter. It's still not going to be a very large amount financially, economically. So volume doesn't necessarily matter. And by the same token, I have seen small collections of 4, 5, or 10 pieces come in, and each one of those pieces are worth $5,000 or $10,000 a piece. So the volume of coins doesn't really matter. And this is something that if you have inherited a collection, I've seen happen time and time again. Folks have been confused as to why this enormous collection of all these boxes and jars and albums and everything else doesn't have a lot of value. It's because each one of those coins needs to have scarcity, condition, age, and demand. This is a good place for us to stop with volume 1 of this series. In volume 2, I'm going to give you the bad news and the good news about the pieces that I have encountered most often when I've been asked to evaluate coin collections. We're going to talk about things like slabs. These are these fancy holders that you see on some coins. I'm going to give you some general ideas as to valuation of the most commonly encountered coins in an American coin collection. I'm going to give you some ideas and thoughts about how to eventually sell this collection if your financial advisors, your tax attorneys and accountants have advised you that it's an okay thing for you to do. Remember, I can't possibly give you that information. I'll give you some ideas and suggestions on how that you can go about finally getting the money from this collection if this is what you want to pursue. And I'll wrap it up with a few additional thoughts and things to work about, to think about as you look at this collection that you are facing. Hopefully it's not quite as daunting as it was, and it's going to be becoming even less so as we get further into this series. Once again, I'd like to ask my regular subscribers, if you do have experience with this, stop the video, add those notes to your own collection, but leave comments down below. I can't gauge the value of each of these comments, so if you're reading these for the first time, I'm not going to approve them or disapprove them. This is really somebody else's experience speaking for themselves. But read through these comments, see if there's other things that you might have questions about that can be answered by some of the other commenters down below. I typically end my videos by saying, if you have questions about any of the things that we've talked about so far, any of the concepts or keys that we discussed, I'd like to encourage you to leave those comments down below. And again, this could help other folks if they have those same questions. I like to say that if you've got a question, somebody else probably has that question too. Let's see if we can answer that for everybody. If you have suggestions or comments of other videos or video series you'd like to see me make, by all means, go ahead and leave that comment down below. And if I make a video or series, I will give you a big shout out. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, once again, I'd like to encourage you to go ahead and click on that subscription button, become part of this community. Stay tuned for Volume 2, where we talk a little bit more about specifics. And if you've got gold pieces, if you've got gold coins, or if you think you do, I strongly encourage you to stick around for Volume 3 also. And I'll try to give you some general information and guidelines about those. I think it warrants its own video. Always be learning. And once again, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.